Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I took a transmission from a Cadillac and a transmission from a BMW E46 and combined them to make a Frankenstein transmission that hopefully will be able to handle a boosted BMW engine. Let's get started. Okay, we're starting the video partway through the project. I guess that's sort of like starting a book in the middle. But anyway, let me give you guys some backstory. First of all, BMW used two different automatic transmissions in the E46. They used the ZF 5HP19, which by the way is what's in my car. And they also used the GM 5L40E. That's actually what this guy is right here. We'll talk about this one in a minute. So anyway, I plan on turbocharging my engine pretty soon. And of course that means I need a transmission that can handle the extra power. To be honest, I don't think the ZF transmission is going to be up to the task. For two reasons. First of all, it doesn't have a very high torque capacity to begin with. The ZF transmission has a torque capacity of 325 Newton meters. The stock 3-liter engine produces 300, so it's already pretty close to the torque capacity of the transmission. Also, the ZF transmission does not have very much aftermarket. Basically, the best we could do with that transmission is a stock rebuild, which once again will be 325 Newton meters of torque capacity. So basically the ZF transmission is not an option. This is where the GM transmission comes in. This guy is rated for, well, either 340 or 360 Newton meters depending on who you ask. GM rates it at 340, BMW rates it at 360. I'm not sure why the discrepancy. But the GM transmission has two things going for it. First of all, there's a better, beefier version of this transmission available, and that's actually what that is right there. But we'll talk about that in a sec. Also, this transmission has some aftermarket support, so we can get upgrade parts that will boost the torque capacity even more. Okay, so let's talk about this transmission. This is a GM 5L50. It's basically just a beefed up version of the 5L40. A lot of the internal parts are the same, although some of the parts have been beefed up so it can handle more torque. Okay, so I had the idea of looking for 5L50 transmissions in BMW vehicles. Maybe I could just swap one in, right? Unfortunately, the only BMW applications I could find for the 5L50 were all-wheel drive. And the all-wheel drive version of the transmission has a transfer case attached to the back, so all this stuff on the back is different, and it won't fit in my car. Or I should say it won't fit up with the drive shaft and stuff. So, unfortunately, that's not an option. So that means we need a two-wheel drive version of the 5L50. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any two-wheel drive 5L50 applications for BMWs, so I had to start looking at other vehicle makes. Long story short, I found a couple Cadillac vehicles that have a two-wheel drive 5L50. Specifically 5L50 behind a North Star V8. This one came out of a 2005 Cadillac SRX. I believe the transmission was used in the 2004 to 2005 SRX and SLS. And once again, it has to be with the V8, because the Cadillac vehicles also came with a V6, and the V6 used the 5L40. Okay, so we got a transmission from a Cadillac with a North Star V8 and two-wheel drive and a 5L50. Unfortunately, I cannot just swap that in the car because, once again, some of the things are different. For example, the shifter mechanism is on the opposite side of the transmission. Also, the transmission mount is different. GM uses a single transmission mount right underneath, whereas BMW uses two of them. And also the bell housing is obviously different because they're two different engines. But since the 5L50 is basically just a beefed up 5L40, I'm thinking maybe I can take all the internal parts out of this one and put them into that one. And then I will have a BMW 5L50. There's only one way to find out, and that's to take this apart and try to put those parts in here. Now this one I've already disassembled. It's basically just an empty shell. But I still need to take that one apart. So yeah, let's do that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, GM rates the 5L50 transmission at 422 Newton meters of torque. That's about 25% more than the 5L40, and it's almost 100 Newton meters more than the ZF automatic. So I think now you can see why I want to get this transmission, or at least all of its internals, into my car. Okay folks, I've got the transmission halfway disassembled, but in order to do the other half of the disassembly, I need to remove this giant snap ring inside the transmission case. And to remove that, I need this giant pair of snap ring pliers. Even with these pliers, this is still going to be a pain in the butt. Let's do this. Okay, so I just broke my snap ring pliers. Check it out. The tip on the one end broke off. That one. So, yeah, that was exciting. I still was able to remove the snap ring using an assortment of prying devices, but in the process, I scored up the inside of the transmission casing. I'm not reusing the casing anyway, but I got to get this thing installed in the other casing, and that means I have to buy new tips for my tool. That sounded wrong. Alright, so here we have it. The 5L50 transmission is disassembled. Now, before we start doing any rebuilds or anything, I want to test fit all these parts into the 5L40 casing to make sure this is all going to fit. Okay, before we do that, let me show you one of the things that makes the 5L50 transmission stronger than the 5L40. What we're looking at here is, these are the output shaft in the ring gear assembly, and this is the output planetary gear assembly. This piece actually fits over the end of that, like so. And inside here is the ring gear. It rides on those planetary gears. Now, this is the 5L50 transmission, and if you look at these planetary gears, you probably can't see it on camera, but these gears are a couple millimeters wider than these ones on the 5L40. And also, if we look at the ring gear housing, it's actually a little bit taller in this direction to accommodate those thicker gears. Okay, since we've got the valve bodies out, let me show you the difference between the 5L50 and the 5L40 valve body. Because the 5L50 valve body is part of the reason why it can handle more torque than the 5L40. And actually, it's pretty easy to tell them apart. If you look up in this corner of the valve body, let's see if the camera will focus, there's a 3-digit number. On this one, the number is partly blocked, but the number is 378. If we look at this other one, that number up in the corner is 374. Once again, this is the 5L50 valve body, number 374. This is the 5L40 valve body, number 378. Naturally, we want that one. Okay folks, our 5L40 transmission casing from the BMW is ready to go. Now we're going to test fit all these 5L50 internal parts into it. Wish me luck. Okay folks, so here it is. We have the 5L50 transmission internals from the Cadillac transmission installed into our 5L40 BMW casing. All we have left to do now is put the BMW bell housing on it, and if it fits, it ships. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Now I get to take the whole thing back apart again so I can install the rebuild kit. Yay! Alright, I've got the transmission disassembled once again. I'm actually getting pretty good at this. As you can see, there's a little bit of schmoo on the transmission casing. So, before I do the rebuild, I'm going to clean this guy up with some SuperClean. Okay, so we have the bell housing and the tail housing and the oil pan reinstalled. Hopefully that will keep some of the water out of it. Hey guys, it's about that time. Time to do another giveaway. Once again, SuperClean has stepped up to the plate. Now, SuperClean is not a paid sponsor, but they do provide cleaning supplies to the channel, and I do appreciate that. And one of you guys can get some free cleaning supplies as well. If you want to win, you just need to follow 3 simple rules. Rule number 1, leave a comment to this video with SuperClean in the comment. Rule number 2, make sure your YouTube profile has an email address where I can contact you. You'd be surprised how many people forget this. And last but not least, rule number 3. You need to have a shipping address that's in the continental US. Okay, best of luck, and thanks again to SuperClean for the support. Now, let's get back to the video. Okay, it's not show car pretty, but at least it's clean. Now I think we will start the rebuild. Okay, so the transmission parts are nice and clean. Now it's time to start the build. And we're going to start with the boost valve. I got this high performance boost valve from Sonnax. This is going to firm up the shifts and hopefully it'll help the transmission handle a boosted engine. Now this guy installs inside the pump assembly. That's what this is. The pump is actually built into the bell housing, just FYI. And the boost valve lives right inside here. Now to get the boost valve out, we have to remove this retainer, but the retainer goes out that way. So to get this retainer out, we have to remove the whole back half of the pump housing. Now it's got a total of 11 bolts. It's got 5 larger ones on the inside ring, then it's got 6 smaller ones on the outside ring. And after you loosen up all those, it comes off. Now you got to be careful when you're taking this thing apart, because this, by the way, this is the pump assembly. And all these pieces are sitting in here loose. So for example, if you turn this thing over, all the stuff is going to fall out. Just FYI. Okay, once again, this retainer, now you can see it better, it needs to go out that way. And that's it. That is the stock boost valve. There's actually a piece inside there, by the way. There it is. This is getting replaced with the Sonnax part. Okay, so here we have the 2 boost valves. This one is the stock unit. This one is the Sonnax high performance unit, and you can notice they're slightly different. For example, the little barbell thing here is different. Also, the stock unit has an O-ring right here, whereas the Sonnax has this interesting 2-piece design. Oh, also, by the way, this is the retainer that we had to remove, and this spring is going to be reused. The spring goes on the back end here. And oh, by the way, Sonnax also makes a stock replacement boost valve, if you'd rather use that. So we're going to install this guy into the pump housing, and that'll be it for the transmission pump. Okay, so off camera I replaced the big O-ring and these seals and all that stuff. So this part of the transmission is ready to go. Let's move on to something else. Okay, I think I'm going to start replacing all the clutch packs. Now, I don't want this video to be a step-by-step tutorial on how to rebuild a transmission, because that's not really the scope of the video. But let me give you a couple tips. Now, if you look at these friction discs, you'll see there's a friction material on one side and bare metal on the other side. So, when you stack these things up, you have to make sure they're all facing the same way. So you've got metal touching friction material. You do not want friction material on friction material, and you do not want metal on metal. Also, you'll see some of these have little gear teeth on the inside, some have little gear teeth on the outside. When you stack these guys up, you need to alternate between the two. Inside, then outside, then inside, then outside, and so on. Oh, and I almost forgot, before you install the new clutches, you need to soak them in transmission oil for about 20 or 30 minutes. Okay, so on these clutch discs, the friction material is facing up. So when we install the new ones, we want to do the same thing. Okay, so I took a break to eat dinner, and the clutches have been soaking in this oil for about an hour now. Let's go ahead and pour out the oil and get to work. Oh, and I also want to mention that I kept the stock clutches and the metal spacers and the snap rings all in the correct order so I don't forget. Okay, so that's one clutch drum down and a bunch to go. Fun times. And I'm also replacing gaskets and seals as I go. So for example, I just replaced all these seals on the input shaft. Okay folks, we replaced all the clutches and the seals. All these parts are ready to reinstall. I also gave them a liberal coating of assembly lube. And also, the casing is ready as well, and I put assembly lube in here too. Last but not least, I printed out a cheat sheet to help me put this thing together. I actually printed this out instead of bringing out my laptop because I don't want my laptop to get all grungy. Okay guys, it's time to tackle my arch nemesis, the giant snap ring. Hey wait, what? Do you hear that? Is that boss music? Oh no. Wow, that went in a lot easier than it came out. There's a joke in there somewhere. Anyway, let's continue. Houston, we have a problem. So I just noticed the BMW tail housing will not fit over the Cadillac output shaft. Now I didn't notice this until now because when I test fitted the Cadillac parts into the BMW casing, I didn't think to install the tail housing. Whoopsie! So, long story short, I got to use the Cadillac tail housing. And of course the mounting arrangements are different. It uses a single mount under the bottom, whereas the BMW uses 2 mounts on the sides. But it looks like it'll be an easy fix. So if I take the cross member here, it looks like I just need a U-shaped bracket to connect the dots, so to speak. That should be doable. But anyway, we're going to continue with the rebuild. Okay, so the transmission is assembled, or at least mostly. I mean, we still have to do some stuff with the valve body. Speaking of which, let's take a look at our Transgo kit for the valve body and wait for that train to go by. Okay, so like I was saying, it's time for us to put the Transgo kit to use. We're going to be replacing the AFL valve first, and it looks like it lives inside here. And it's got another one of those funky little L-shaped retainers, and of course it goes out that way, so I think we need to take the valve body apart, or at least this part of it. Okay, so to remove this part of the valve body, it looks like we need to remove one screw over here, and then if I flip it over, there are 4 more screws. Here, and there. Okay, so I actually ended up having to remove the accumulator thingies as well. I think that's what they're called, accumulators. Anyway, if you look closely, we got a broken spring in that one right there. Now, I think the springs are different in each of them, but hey, I've got a spare transmission with a spare valve body, so hopefully the spring in that one is good. We'll take a look. Okay, folks, here is our spare valve body. Let's pull this guy off and see if we have a good spring. Cross your fingers. Yes. All right, we are back in business. Awesome. Okay, we got our little retainer out. Once again, it has to go out that way. And there's also a spring in there. Here's the spring. So you got to compress the spring. And then while you're holding the spring compressed, you got to drive this guy out. It'd probably help to put this in a vise. Oh, and since this guy is kind of blocking access to this, we got to drill this out, by the way. Since this is kind of blocking access, I'm going to remove this as well. And this just has a circlip. You can get a screwdriver under it like I did here, and just, uh-oh. Hey, I found it. Time to buy a lottery ticket, right? Okay, so we're going to be removing this little guy so we can get access to this and ream it out with the reamer tool in the Transgo kit. Okay, so compressing these springs to reinsert this retainer is going to be super fun. So I brought out a vise to give me a helping hand. Okay guys, the valve body is ready to install. Just a couple comments. First of all, these little plastic tabs are super fragile. You got to be really careful with these things so you don't break them. Also, I went ahead and replaced the O-rings on the big electrical connector. So yeah, let's install this guy. so the valve body is installed and everything in here is all buttoned up. We need to do one last thing before we button up the transmission for good, and that is to install the Transgo pressure regulator valve. Now, I made a mistake actually, because this guy goes in the pump. I remember a little while ago when we replaced the boost valve in the pump. Yeah, that was the time to install this. So, the bell housing has to come back off, and the pump has to come back apart. No! Okay, it's like deja vu all over again. Anyway, the pressure regulator valve lives inside here, which is right behind the boost valve, so the boost valve has to come out. Once again, we have to depress it a little bit to relieve the tension off of this retainer, and the retainer goes out that way. Okay, we got the pump reassembled, and we're going to install it on the transmission one last time. I hope. Okay folks, this transmission build is basically complete. Now we're just doing the finishing touches. Speaking of which, I've got two oil pans here for it. They both fit. And they also both have some dents in them. I'm probably going to use the black one because I think the black will look better. And I think I'll paint the torque converter black as well, and maybe some of the trim pieces. I'm also going to paint the transmission aluminum color. I know that's ironic, but it's got a lot of oxidation on it, and to be honest, it's going to take forever to remove all that mechanically. So we're just going to slap a coat of paint on it and pretend it's not there. Yeah. Okay folks, our Frankenstein transmission is ready to rock. We got a fresh coat of paint. She's looking nice and pretty. Of course, the next step in the project will be to install this thing in the car, but we're going to do that in the next video, after I clean up my mess. So, yeah, stay tuned.